आओ जी, आओ जी, आओ जी आयान।
A very warm welcome to all of you for sparing time to be here on this Sunday evening. But I promise you, you're going to absolutely love this session with Preeti Shenoy and Shiny Anthony. Preeti Shenoy is the best selling celebrity author of a number of books. Among them, When Love Came Calling, Wake Up, Life is Calling, Life is What You Make It, Why We Love the Way We Do, etc. Her work has been widely translated, and she is also a motivational speaker and an artist. She is among the top five highest selling authors in India today. And we've got her with us this evening to tell us about her new book, The Magic Mindset. I've got it here and I recommend it highly to each one who's joining us this evening to listen to this conversation. Because in this book, she actually tells us how to find our happy place. And as she says in her introduction, the world turned upside down when the dreaded COVID 19 took over the lives of 2.78 million people worldwide. We locked ourselves in, and our hope soon turned to fear and uncertainty as months passed by and people lost lives, they lost incomes, jobs, and hordes of migrant workers who've actually built our cities and towns and our institutions and factories started their long walk back to their homes. And in the absence of food and livelihoods or any hope of getting anything soon from employers and government, which all, everybody seemed to be so unseeing and so unfeeling and indifferent. And there are innumerable stories of the terrible, terrible treks back that these people made. Today, despite the vaccines, and I think a lot of us have already got our vaccine, some of us have also had COVID, I don't think there's anybody who believes that this is going to pass. This is an endemic thing now. And I don't know whether we'll ever go back to that pre COVID normal time, whatever that normal was. So, a book like this is something that we all need in our lives. It shows us how to find positivity. There's also a 14-day magic mindset challenge that Preeti gives us that will gently nudge us towards this journey of hope and joy and belief. And talking to Preeti today is Shiny Anthony, co founder of the Bangalore Literature Festival. She's a writer, poet, and editor par excellence. She's got a number of short story anthologies to her credit: The Orphanage for Words, Barefoot and Pregnant, and she's also written a lot of novels, When Meera Went Forth and Multiplied, and her dark and delicious thriller called The Girl Who Could Not Love. She's also popularly known as Chetan Bhagat's editor at Rupa Publications. So, on that note, I'm going to ask Shiny to please take this conversation forward, and welcome to both of you.
Thank you, Preeti Gill, and hello, Preeti Shenoy, two of my favorite Preetis right here. Preeti, I would like you, or I would like to request you to close your eyes. Just close your eyes. Just for a moment and think of your happy place and share the location with us. Okay, after a moment. A garden, a room, a house, a city, wherever that is. Okay.
No, my happy place is right here, this room. This room has everything that I need. It has my favorite books. It has my bed. It has my desk. It has all my art supplies. And right now, my cat is on the bed. So, it has a couple of my plants. So, honestly, that's all I need to be happy. And time to time, someone can just leave some food outside the door. So, I don't even have to see anybody or meet anyone. Ideal writer's room that I have.
Okay. I have been reading you since your first book, Preeti, and you just surprise me with each book. across fiction and non-fiction, and you're one of those few writers who straddles both the genres. Very few writers can do that. You write fiction and you write non-fiction.
Yeah.
Going deeply and intimately into different types of issues. You have gone into mania, into bipolar disorder, older romance, self-help, demanding of you different styles of writing and different types of research.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Magic Mindset is a practical and yet so passionate. So tell us what brought you to this book, this new book of yours.
So to be honest, I never expected, even in my wildest dreams, to write a book on hope in the bleakest of times, which was the pandemic. So the book kind of just happened. In 2020, when the lockdown started, we were all told that it would be just for 21 days. So we said, okay, fine, 21 days, we can get through it. And we were all prepared. But then 21 days became 40 days, became 50 days. And at that time, I had started this thing called 21 Days of Positivity. So every day I would post a little thing on my blog and people could read it free of cost if they subscribed. And it was giving hope to a lot of people. But when the lockdowns kept getting extended, I moved that to my Instagram, where I would post simple things like a flower which bloomed, like the sunshine which was streaming in. And a lot of people found solace in that simply because they were cooped up in their apartments. They didn't have balconies. They didn't have access to the outside world. So they began waiting for my stories, on my Instagram. And inadvertently, I had created a community that cared. Because if I didn't post, I would get messages asking, am I okay? What's happening? Is everything okay? And around this time, I started jotting down whatever came to my head, because there were so many deaths happening around us. And I think that was a kind of a wake-up call saying that, look, anything can happen anytime. So I wanted to leave something for my children, actually. So I started jotting down bits of wisdom, things that my father had said and all of that. And I mentioned it to the editor at HarperCollins, and she was very interested. They were very keen to publish it. And that's when I actually started working in a structured manner on this book. And that's how this book came about.
Okay, that's obviously, despite the bleak times, you kept hope alive for yourself first, and then you could bring it to the others. You say somewhere in the book that the human mind fixates on problems, lows rather than highs. And I thought, oh my God, that's so true. Good news we forget, and we only remember the bad news, and our mind keeps coming back to that. Like we forget the good and brood over the bad. You have quoted someone who says memories are like bullets. And you say, once we begin thinking, we simply cannot stop. And again, quoting you, life often sends us down tunnels we never anticipated. So how do we dig our way out of this? Obviously, feeling low or being low is kind of a permanent address for most of us.
So one thing we have to remember is we are all wired that way. See, our ancient ancestors had to survive in the wild. And in order to survive in the wild, they had to be very aware of the danger. So, you are always focusing on what is bad, what is danger, what can happen. This can happen. So we are wired that way. It's a survival instinct. And that in the modern times, unfortunately, has disastrous consequences simply because we keep thinking, see, when something good happens to us, we never think, why did this happen? But when something bad happens to us, we always feel, oh, why did this happen? What a terrible thing. Why did this happen? So throughout the book, I have outlined in every situation, I have outlined things that you can do, the steps that you can take, the little things that you can do, because you cannot suddenly feel better overnight. It's just, what you can do is you can take some practical steps. You can be 1% better than what you were yesterday. So, and then throughout the book, I have thought of every situation possible, whether it's interviews, whether it's loss of a loved one, whether it's a breakup, whether it's health, whether it's finances, whether you're worried about your money, whether you lost a job, whether it's saying no to people, all of those situations I have analyzed what possibly could go wrong. I have shared instances from my life, what I did. I have shared the steps that people can take. And at the end of each chapter, there's a little exercise like this to reflect and to write down what you feel, because everybody has different problems and there's no one solution which fits all. And so I have given all of that, which will hopefully help people to take steps to feel better and to find their happy place, to find their way back to the happy place, actually.
Very, like I said, very practical also. Can you give us a brief reading from the book, just so that we get a feel of the book?
Okay, so I think what I would like to read is how, like, a lot of people are skeptical when it comes to mindset. They say manifestation is some mumbo jumbo. I don't know how I can use it. It doesn't work. So to them, I have written this chapter about how our mindset can change our reality. So there's a very famous experiment. It was a Harvard psychologist, and this is taken from the Harvard Gazette. So Ellen Langer conducted a social experiment in 1981. She wanted to test if we could turn back the clock psychologically. If so, will it result in physical changes? She decided to investigate the impact of our thoughts and beliefs that have, she decided to investigate the impact our thoughts and beliefs have on our health, specifically our aging process. So as a part of the study, Langer chose 8 men in their late 70s. So they were invited to live in a residential retreat, and everything was recreated to make it like it was the year 1959. And that was the year that these men were in the prime of their youth. The home had no mirrors and television was black and white. All the shows that were being played were shows that were popular at that time. Radio played songs that were popular at that time, like Perry Como, Jack Benny. And when the participants arrived, they went through various tests that measured their mental and physical function. Their memory, cognitive ability, hearing, vision, flexibility, everything was recorded and documented. Twice a day, researchers discussed topics that were important in that era, whether US needed bomb shelters to defend against a possible Soviet attack, Fidel Castro's advances in Cuba, etc. Then the men were asked to take part in this make-believe game. At the end of the experiment, all the men were tested on the same parameters that they were tested on upon arrival, and the improvements were dramatic. Langer noticed a significant improvement in physical strength, in hearing, vision, IQ, posture, memory, as well as an increase in their overall sense of well-being. A participant who had come in a wheelchair was seen playing football on the lawn. So that kind of really blew my mind. It was, how can this happen? So Ellen Langer says, whatever you put in your mind, you also put in the body. She concluded that our mindset has a much greater impact on our health and aging than we believe. By extension, changing our mindset can change our overall well-being. So this is just one of the instances that I have given about how magic mindset can change reality. And there's another instance which I gave, which is Graham Miles and the locked-in syndrome. And this, I came across the story when I was living in the UK. So there was this person called Graham Miles, and he suddenly suffered from a brainstem stroke when he was driving home from work. He slipped into a coma, and when he woke up 2 days later in the hospital, he was completely paralyzed from head to toe. The only thing that he could move were his eyes. The doctors called it the locked-in syndrome, a condition in which a person is awake and completely aware of everything, but he cannot move or communicate. Doctors predicted that Graham would never recover. So Graham says that he focused initially on only what he could do, which was move his little toe, like he visualized it in his mind. And ultimately today, Graham drives a racing car. He's not only walking, he's even driving, and he's doing everything that the doctors said that he couldn't do, which is remarkable to me. Graham's story inspires. It reinforces how the magic mindset can overcome what seems to be insurmountable obstacles. And these are just ordinary people who have used the thought of their mind to change their reality. So I believe strongly that it can be done. So these are just 2 instances.
Very inspiring instances. Thanks, Preeti.
Yeah.
The book is dedicated to your father, and it's almost like he is there on every page with you in the book, and he's obviously your hero.
Yeah.
So can you just tell us a little bit more about your father? Because I think you have remembered verbatim a lot of advice that he gave you, and obviously you were very close.
Yeah.
And you've quoted him throughout the book.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, I think my father had a great influence in shaping me, in becoming the person that I am, especially when it came to positivity. And as I mentioned in the book, I've shared a lot of personal anecdotes. So I lost my father all of a sudden. In fact, my going public with my writing happened after my father's death. So one moment he was there, and the next moment he had just leaned back in his chair and he was gone. And he was supposed to visit me a week later. I was in Pune at that time and he was in Kerala, and he was absolutely fine. He would walk like, 6-7 kilometers a day. He had meetings lined up. So his death was a complete shock. It was a bolt from the blue. So that made me realize that anything can happen anytime. And it took me a long while to get over the grief. And while I was writing this book, it wasn't a conscious thing that I wanted to bring my father in, but it just came. So that was the thing that I wanted to share, because I have used what he told me and I know it works, and hence I shared all of that in the book.
I remember in Malayalam writer Sarah Joseph's book Odappa, she mentions when in the course of describing a character that most successful women share a very good relationship with their father while growing up. And I was reminded of that when I was reading your book, because there's so much of your father infusing the book.
Yeah, probably that's true.
Yeah, I feel it's true too, because I'm very close to my dad, and
Exactly.
I feel the deep sense of self kind of comes from him.
Yeah.
The thing about magic mindset, which really, I enjoyed, is that it encompasses all kinds of feelings. There's no gun to the head that, you can only feel good feelings.
Yeah.
Because bad feelings, if you bury them or you circumvent them, obviously they're going to come back and bite you in the ass later on.
Yeah.
And but the thing that I kept texting you while reading is that every place you mention in this, Bhutan, then Dakshin Chitra Museum in Tamil Nadu, and Khan Market in Delhi, you have you put in so many places.
Yeah.
I feel any reader will just want to slip on his or her sneakers and run out of the front door, to go and see all these places. And especially now that we're cooped up and we're not able to, meet sunshine halfway.
Yeah.
What I wanted to ask you is, because there's so much of traveling, and in your book, there is a lot of your anecdotes are to do with what you noticed, observed, and felt during your travels. Which is more important? The traveling that we do outside, people are even going to this outer space now, or the travel within the self, which is going to get us serenity faster, peace of mind?
See, I think both are important. See, you don't necessarily have to travel to get peace of mind, because that's something that I discovered during the pandemic, because we were all cooped up now. Had 2 years since I went to any place. So, it's okay. But then we accept it. And Viktor Frankl says, and I've quoted Viktor Frankl in the book, that when you cannot change the circumstances outside you, change what is going on within you, because that we always have a power on. So while travel is nice, okay, travel gives you a nice vacation. But one thing we have to remember is you cannot take a vacation from life. That's so, like, you can take vacations as much as you want, but then you always have to come back to life and reality. So that's really important. Like, it's okay if you can't travel. You can always travel through books, through movies. I feel in the pandemic, I have visited New York, Italy. I have gone to, Virgin Islands and all of that because of the TV shows and all of that. We have technology at our fingertips today. So we can experience what without traveling, we can experience everything that a place has to offer. So I would say, it is important to self-reflect though and travel to that place inside your head in order to change, more than going anywhere externally. External travels can be a nice distraction. It can be a nice little vacation. And that's all there is to it. Then you have to come back to reality and face it.
Yeah, so I think there's some song, wherever you go, you always take the weather with you.
Yeah, that's true. That's very,
We create our own weather.
whether it's sunny or rainy, you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Supposing the world is like, overnight back to what it used to be, and the whole COVID thing was like a bad dream or
Yeah.
whatever, we wake up and the world is back
Yeah,
to what
yeah.
it was. Which is a place that you'd love to just rush out to and be in?
I'll come to your house, Shiny. I'll take my car and come to your house. I'll just drive straight to your house.
I stay quite close. So
I know, and I can even cycle. But the thing is, see, even now when we want to visit our friends, we are thinking twice. Oh my God, will they be okay with it? What about masks? Should I remove the mask? Like when you have to hug your friend, you think twice. Oh, will they be skeptical about COVID? Can I hug them? And I mean, you want to do it. So yeah.
I
But-
went for my walk today in the morning, and for the first time, I forgot my mask.
Mask, yeah.
Yeah, and I remembered it much later. I was looking at everybody else. I said, there's something different. And then I realized my face is naked. My
Yeah.
face is naked. It was like, the olden times going out without your pants, that kind of a nightmare that we have. That's what the mask is become today.
No, seriously. And then, even lipstick, you wear it only when you come online, because only then people will see your face. When you go outside, they don't see it anyway.
Yeah.
So you focus on the eyes, you're making your eyes bigger and, your makeup. And I mean, it's just crazy. The crazy times we live in. I'll be glad when it's all behind us.
Yes. You mentioned AC/DC. How does that work?
Yeah. So there is this, entire chapter in my book, which is about the magic mindset, using the magic mindset for dealing with situations beyond our control. So I have mentioned what I use when I cannot control something. What I use is the principle of AC/DC, which is acknowledge, A for acknowledge, C for change, and D for detach, and C for create. So and I've explained all of this in the book. So the first thing for us to do is to acknowledge our grief. I have written about it in detail because many a time the positivity pundits tell us that, oh no, look at the bright side. You have it. Don't worry. Don't feel sad, because look at everything that you have. You should be grateful for it. But sometimes it's simply not possible to be grateful for it. Like if you have a raging headache, that's all you can focus on. You cannot focus on the million things that you have. So the first thing, and especially if it's a big loss, like if you have lost a loved one, or if you have lost a job, for instance, I mean, it's just impossible then to focus on the positives that you have. So the first thing is to acknowledge the grief, which is let it flow through you. Because if you try to suppress it, it's going to come out in other ways, and it's going to reflect in your behavior, and your healing is going to take that much longer. And once you have acknowledged the behavior, the second thing to do is change. So I have given several things that you can do, because we cannot instantly change our thoughts. But what we can do is we can change our location, we can change our atmosphere, we can practice acts of kindness. And I have given several things that you can do to bring about a change in your physical surroundings. And then the third thing that I have said is detach, don't dwell. And what I like to quote from the book is, we all live under the illusion that we have control over our outcomes, stemming from the conditioning that tells us that if we do our bit, we will get everything that we strive for. Because from childhood, we've been told, don't worry, you just work hard. It'll all work, get good marks. Just focus on your academics. It'll all work out. But it's not. We've all been fed a big, massive lie. So, but in truth, we truly do not have control over anything. So, and then I have given a little experiment. So what I say is, here's a little experiment. Speak to 10 people you know. Ask them if they are in the career they always hoped for, or ask them if they made a switch because they realized what they were doing was making them unhappy. Chances are 7 of them will tell you that they switched careers, or they're in a career they never thought they would be in. So life often sends us down the tunnels. And I have given an inspiring story of Zachary Moore, who was actually sentenced for murder, and he was sentenced to prison. And today he earns $100,000 in an engineering job For 22 years, Zachary lived in a 6'9" prison cell, and how he turned and changed his life. So if Zachary can do it, why can't we? Why can't we? So we can come out of that conditioning. And I mentioned all of that in the book. And the last one is to create peace. So I have given instances of how you can actually create peace. I have dwelled a little on meditation because I know the young people think that meditation, we can't do meditation. But I've given small steps that you can take, how you can start with 2 minutes, you can do guided meditation and all of that, and how you can slowly take back the control over the situation which you felt you had no control over. So that's in nutshell ACDC. To know it in detail, do read the book. To everyone who is listening.
You also mentioned a very interesting technique about cutting the cord. You know,
Yeah.
when somebody, we know we are in a toxic relationship or
Yeah.
in a toxic tie, and sometimes it's within your family, it's a blood tie.
Yes.
You can't walk out basically.
Yes.
So, and especially in these pandemic times,
Yeah.
a lot of domestic abuse is on the rise because
Yeah.
people are working from home and you really have no respite.
Yeah.
In fact, in New Zealand, the Prime Minister started something there where it's a silent phone call. You can dial a number, they will ask you the questions. That's it. And because sometimes the victim is not even able to speak and say, because the abuser is right there with the victim constantly 24/7. So how would you talk about that, about cutting the cord, and how does one go about doing that?
So basically, see, if you are a victim of domestic abuse or something like that, I would say urgently seek help. Urgently use whatever means that you can, because I've seen women put out pleas on Twitter. So, and then someone said, oh, if they are putting it out on Twitter, why didn't they call anyone? But it's very hard to call someone and ask for help. Sometimes it's just easier to put a plea for help out there. So that's as far as the domestic abuse goes. But the cord cutting exercise, what I specifically mentioned in the book is once you have separated from a toxic relationship, once you are outside of that atmosphere, it's very difficult to let it go inside your head. See, you might have been verbally abused. You might not have realized that you're verbally abused. And you might have continued in that relationship for years. And you might still have feelings for that person, even though even though we are logical creatures, a large part of us is also emotional. So in order to help you heal emotionally, I highly recommend this exercise, which worked for me actually. So when I lost a dear friend, so by lost, I mean she completely cut me off. There was no reason given. I tried calling her, but she would never answer my phone calls. And she was a very dear friend. So this exercise truly works, whether it's a friend, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a boyfriend, whether you've been dumped. So I talk about visualizing the energy cords that connect us. And it's a visualization exercise. And I describe it in detail in the book. And I explain the process of how to do it. And I recommend it doing many times. And I firmly believe that it works because you feel better that you've done something. This visualization is something I highly believe in and highly recommend. So whether it is to get over someone that you have emotional connect with, whether it is to achieve what you want to achieve, visualization is extremely powerful, highly recommended.
There really is nothing more tragic than what's happened now, the whole pandemic thing, and so many lives lost, and people who had comorbidities still living in hiding despite the vaccines and everything.
Yeah.
But do you think, a lot of people were talking about how the pandemic was kind of a slap on the face of the planet, because
slap on the face of
the planet of Earth, because we didn't really look after, we didn't do good housekeeping, so to speak, Do you think now that, I'm maybe being wildly hopeful, but we are kind of putting the worst behind us.
Yeah.
Do you think there was any practical lesson that we've learned over these past few months?
I definitely think we have learned lessons. See, for example, my daughter was telling me the other day, she's saying, Mama, I can't imagine how unhygienically we were living. So that was like an eye opener. So because we never thought much. So what is the practical lesson? One is, see, even after people have recovered, in recent times, we've heard so many instances. My friend lost her brother. All of a sudden, he contracted COVID many months back, but he'd recovered, but suddenly he passed away. He was just 52. And recently, the Kannada actor Puneet Rajkumar, who's just 47, he just passed away all of a sudden. So I think the lesson that we have learned is to value each moment, because we really don't know. Today we are speaking to someone, tomorrow that person may not be there. So we always knew it, but the pandemic, I feel, has highlighted that and kind of pushed it in our faces, and said, look here, this is the person you value. You better speak to them. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So I feel that's a big lesson that the pandemic has taught us.
To take every moment and every person more seriously than I think.
No longer a cliche. See, we all knew it, Shiny, but for most of us, it was just a cliche. It was something we read in books and something which some self-help gurus said. But for all of us now, it's such a reality. You never know. So you better value the moments. It's so important. You cherish it.
Yeah, that's sad but true.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to ask you, since this book must have been difficult to write,
Yeah.
because there is a almost scientific methodology involved in writing such a book, and it also takes everything you ever knew in your entire life you're putting that on record. You're bringing that everything to the table. So
True.
how has writing this book itself changed your life?
How has it changed my life? It really hasn't changed my life, to be honest. Because, see, I wouldn't say it was cathartic, simply because I had already processed the grief. But it was so hard to write because I had to revisit every memory which I have just suppressed. So, I had to take that out because I wanted to give something of value to anyone who read this book. So I genuinely wanted to make people feel better. I wanted to share from my life. And in order to do that, I had to dredge up those memories. Therefore, it was very hard to write when I was writing it. It was extremely, extremely, extremely hard. But I think how it has changed my life, probably it has made me grow as a writer. So because if I could write a book on hope during the bleakest of time, I think it taught me something. So that's how I would say it has changed my life. But in terms of other things, no, I'm still in my room. I'm still in my happy place. I'm still very contented with everything that I have.
All right. So this was also a non-fiction book that you wrote. And you usually write fiction.
Yes.
Okay. So I just wanted to ask, what are the technical differences? How do you approach writing either of these? Is it a similar way of writing?
Yeah.
Even the place that you choose to sit and write in,
Yeah.
your table, your book, is all of that the same, the outside of it and the inside of it?
Yeah. So where I choose to sit and write is just the same. I have one spot in my room where I write all my books. I write my books there. But for me, fiction is very easy to write compared to non-fiction. Because fiction, I can just escape with my characters. I can jump into a jeep with my character and go wherever my character takes me. That's nice. So I can just let my mind wander. And it's the kind of research that I do for fiction is very different from what the kind of research that I did for non-fiction. Because over here, I took instances of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, for which I had to research a lot. I had to read up a lot. And every single thing that I quoted had to be right. So, the kind of research that I did for this is very different. Whereas, in fiction, there's more emotion. The characters inside, outside. Once I've created them, they take a life on their own. And then all I'm doing is transcribing what they are saying. Actually, I can actually see it play out like a movie in front of my eyes. But for fiction, not so much. Yeah, I have to dig. I have to see. It's a very deliberate process in writing non-fiction. In fiction, I can just let myself go. So those are the two differences between writing fiction and non-fiction.
You are a motivational speaker.
Yes.
And this book is also a motivational book.
Yes.
So who are the writers or books that you have turned to for inspiration over the years? Movies, books, authors, people, anyone. Your father, of course, I think heads the list, but other people and books.
So everything that I describe in this book, I have recommended a lot of books in this book itself. So if you read this book, you will find all the authors that I recommend. One is, of course, Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. I think it's a must-read book. Then Tuesdays with Morrie, Mitch Albom. I absolutely love his philosophy. That is a must-read. And almost everything that I have mentioned in this book I have quoted the source, and a lot of books I have recommended, simply because I don't think there can be one person who gives you all the motivation. So because you may relate to some things that they are saying and you may not relate to many other things. So what I mentioned in this book is I have taken what I could relate to. I have related it to my personal life, and I have shared how I used that particular teaching. So that's one of the things that I do in the book.
No, but is there any teacher at school or an employer or someone, an aunt or someone whom you kind of felt,
No, not really. I would say a lot of people in my life. I feel you don't need a motivational person to be inspired by. Like, if you want to look for inspiration, you can find it anywhere. For example, I would say my house help. I find her very inspiring. See, she was married off at the age of 16, and she lost her husband. She's raising 3 children from the village. She's never been to the city. So from the village, she came to the city, and she's got 2 sons and a daughter. She's put both her sons in Navodaya Vidyalaya. She works about 6 houses to just send her children to school. And I find that story inspiring. So I feel if you want to look for inspiration, you really don't have to turn to gurus or anyone else. You can just look around you. And I feel every person has something inspiring to share. And it all depends on what you're looking for. I mean, it's almost like when you look for answers, the teacher will appear. So that's the philosophy that I have followed in my life. And yeah, so I feel you can find inspiration anywhere.
So nicely said, and with so much empathy.
Yeah.
On social media, we see these really lovely pictures of you on your cycle with flowers, with a lake next to your house. There seems to be a walking track, and you obviously have a garden in your own house because you have rain lilies, and you put up all those beautiful pictures. And in your book itself, you've written about a whiteboard where all of you, it's in the kitchen, and all of you come there, and I'm imagining something really sunny and brightly lit kind of a kitchen, and all of you come there and you write notes to each other on that. So all of that, it's within the book also, and what I see on what we see on social media also gives us a fair picture of how fulfilled your life must be. But still, for all those who are watching you, and for whom, for all of us, you're a favorite writer. So just take us through a typical day in your life.
So I wanted to say this. Okay, so while I really want to say this. So people look at the beautiful lakes. I have 3 lakes near my house, but then so does everybody living in that neighborhood. Everyone in Bangalore, I think, has a lake within an arm's throw, because Bangalore is full of lakes. But the thing is, I will, when I show the cycle, I don't show the dirt tracks. I don't show the road. It's full of potholes. It's full of, it's full of mud and dirt when it rains to get there. So I think life is like that. You focus on something beautiful and ignore the troubles that you take. Like, most people see that, oh my God, she lives in such a beautiful neighborhood. She's got lakes, but so does everyone else. And then, in fact, one of my neighbors commented, oh, I didn't realize our neighborhood was so beautiful. It's only through the stories that you post. Because, you focus on certain things. So that's the thing, So a typical day in my life, actually...
when do you wake up to begin with?
See, I had a dog earlier. I lost my dog in Jan, and that was something so traumatic for me because my dog was like my baby. And so happened that a cat came the next day. It's almost like, I mean, I could not deal with the loss of my dog. It was very hard. Any dog lover would be able to relate, because dogs are never dogs, they are babies. So next day the cat came. So my dog used to wake me up at 6. Now my cat wakes me up at 6, and she was a stray cat. So generally my time of waking up at 6, and I never intended to keep a cat because I'm a complete dog person, but this cat was pregnant. So then I felt very sorry for her, being the animal lover that I am. So my cat wakes me up now at 6, and then I go for my walk, I cycle, then I come back, and usually I make breakfast. Either I'll make my breakfast or my husband will cook. And then, so nowadays, last few days, I've been completely spending time with my children. So if I'm working on a book, then I begin working on my book. So then it's uninterrupted time of about 3-4 hours where I completely work on my book. Then take a small break for lunch, and after that, maybe I'll post on social media. Afternoon, maybe 1-2 hours I'll devote to posting on social media. And then probably watch a TV show, probably go out for a walk. So there's no typical day. So mostly nowadays, like for the past 1 year, my children were with me. So my time was all for my children. So now my son has gone. Soon my daughter will leave. And then I'll have to start the routine again of, finding things that I want to do. So right now it's like what they want to do, we just do that.
I just want to add that personally, I'm very impressed by the fact that, whenever we friends call you out, you're so dedicated and so committed to your work. And I'm like, the closer the deadline is, the faster I run out of my front door, because I just want to avoid my work. I did that with the kids too. I think I kind of wanted to disappear when they were growing up. And you are just so dedicated to your work. You would be like, no, I'm writing. It just started. I cannot meet. And then we like time you, and we're like, okay. So the next 3 months, we are not going to meet Preeti for 3 months, Yeah.
No, I'm very fortunate that my friends understand. So I highly value our friendship, Shiny. Because I know that you guys will get it. Because I am like that. Because if I'm working and if I come out, I will not enjoy it because my head will all be in the book. So I'll really not be able to give myself to the conversation or any of that. So I would rather come out when I finish it. And also it's like a what can I say, like a treat for myself. So I'll be like, okay, once I finish this, I'll go and meet Shiny and my other friends. So it's like that. So I just keep myself motivated. And I think one of the things that I have learned is to say no over the years. So because a lot of people find it hard to say no. And I mentioned that in the book as well, like how you can say no. So that I think has helped me a lot. And if they are your true friends, they will understand. They are not going to break off their friendship just because you said, I'm not going to come out with you one evening.
No, we learn from you actually, Preeti. We are very impressed. We learn from you. And even about this whole no thing that you were talking about, I think there's women in India, or maybe all of Asia, maybe all over the world, I don't know. But we kind of have this people-pleasing gene, and it's very, very difficult to talk about money and to say no. I think these are the two things that we really grapple with all the time.
No, it's very true, because we've all been conditioned, and it was hard for me initially. My first book, I was such a greenhorn. I didn't know, and I would so hesitate. And then I learned when I wrote my second book, third book, fourth book, then when I learned to handle my own thing, that's when I became more confident about saying no, about speaking about money. And it's so important. We've all been conditioned because, when we say no to others, we are saying yes to ourselves. And I think we all deserve that kindness. We need to be kind to ourselves first before we can show that compassion and kindness to others. So I think it's extremely important.
Very true. But it's something that I think because of our conditioning, it kind of dawns on us much later in life. And then it's like a weapon that we have to, grow within ourselves. Yeah.
True.
I think we are ready to take questions. What is your current short-term goal, Preeti ma'am?
Current short-term goal. I think just to miss my son a little less. That's my short-term goal, because I'm missing him so much. He just left this morning, and just before the live, I was just, telling him, sitting there and telling my husband and my daughter, I'm feeling sad, and they're also feeling sad. So my short-term immediate goal is to get over that sadness, and it will happen with time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my short-term goal.
Okay, someone has written, sometimes our privileges account for the positivity in our life, but what happens to the underprivileged who have been struggling for daily bread? At the same time, many privileged women also face the pressure of work and lack of space. How to stay positive under such circumstances?
See, the thing is, you have to accept. You cannot simply say, I want to be positive and be positive. You have to take a stock of your reality. And one thing you have to accept is you cannot take everybody's problems on your head. You might want to. There are so many things that I feel deeply about, but I have to accept that I may not be able to help everyone. So I think that's an extremely important mindset to have, that look, you can't help everyone. You just can't, because there are way too many problems. So you will have to help yourself first. You will have to focus on those things that bring you joy. You will have to trust the process. You will have to remember that if something happens, it's making you grow, because you never grow when you're comfortable. It's only when you're uncomfortable that you grow. So these are some of the things that you can remember in order to have a positive mindset.
Someone's asked if Magic Mindset is fiction.
No, it's a non-fiction book. It's a self-help book, and it has it has every possible situation and how to deal with it. It's a self-help, motivational, inspirational book. It's not fiction at all. And I've shared a lot from my life.
The next question is how to maintain the habit of valuing loved ones as a long-term habit, because we often forget to do so after a while.
So one of the things I recommend is, this book, you don't have to read it and forget about it. You can keep coming back to this book, because your answers will vary depending on what stage you are in life. And I think valuing our loved ones is not a habit. It's a conscious choice that you have to make. You have to remind yourself that, look, this is the last time that you may see them. And then you will value them yourselves. It's not a habit. It's a choice that you are making. Once you're aware of that fact, I think you'll be good.
Why is it so difficult to forgive people sometimes for some of the things they have done? How to learn to forgive?
Yeah, so that is something I mention again in the book. So one thing we have to remember, it's very hard to forgive. It's very, very hard, simply because, and especially a loved one, because we feel that loved one owes us something. We feel we've done so much for this person. How can this person behave this way to us? So there is that expectation set. So you have to remember that your loved one was only capable of that much at that point in time. That's all they could do. They were not capable of anything more. See, we will not get angry with a 2-year-old child, because the child is capable only of that much. So if we remember that whichever person has wronged us, there are certain circumstances that made them act that way. They could only give you that much. So if you remember that, it will help you to forgive them. Because at some point, even we have hurt others. Even we were capable of only that much. So if you keep this in mind, I think forgiving becomes easier.
Okay. One advice to a true friend who has been thrown away by her friend because she's dusky and fat.
Oh no, dump that person. Don't even think about that person. That's horrible. That person is not even a friend. I mean, why are you even hanging around that person? Just run away and make new friends. How horrible. You don't need that person.
Okay. How to be consistent when building a habit or mindset?
How to be consistent
while building a habit or mindset?
Yeah.
I guess like something like Magic Mindset.
Yeah. So the only thing that you can do is keep practicing. See, what I do at the end of the day is, I have so many journals. All these are my journals. So one will be an illustrator journal. One will be something that I write in. So I think for me personally, writing has helped, because when I sit down at the end of the day and I write, and I've been writing since I was, say, 12 or 13. So I reflect what has gone wrong, what has gone wrong. Maybe I could have done this better. So the only way to do it is to practice constantly. So there is no shortcut. So for me, writing in a journal helps. So maybe it will help you. Maybe you need to try that.
When we are really annoyed with someone, our rage is ready to burst. How can we control that anger? Is it okay expressing it? People do get hurt with our words and our actions. So is it okay if we express our anger or not? Then how can we avoid our anger?
Yeah, see, you cannot avoid anger. See, anger means you actually care about that person. Because if it's someone you don't care about, you won't feel angry. But I would highly recommend just go out for a walk or just step away from the situation. Don't say things that when you're angry. Because when you're angry, you say all kinds of things, and it's so hard to take it back. Now, I've been married 26 years, so I have learned, so you just learn to accept, you understand what the other person is saying, and just step away from that situation. And maybe when you're calmer, express it in a kinder way. Please don't express yourself when you're angry. At least that's what I feel, because I feel things said in anger, it can ruin relationships, because it can burn and it can just leave ashes. And once it's ashes, you can never build it back. So I do feel it's okay to feel angry, but it's important to express it kindly.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's another question from Mr. Gurup Dej Singh, sir. And he says, how do you get the mindset that you have? How much of it from the external stimuli and how much from the inner self? Further, how does your inner self get constructed? Again, does it depend on your external stimuli?
Yeah, so then I have a chapter in the book called Magic Mindset and Reality. So which questions does our external circumstances influence what we feel inside? So I have an entire chapter in the book which goes in detail, and I think you can be happy despite your external circumstances. You can be happy, you can seek peace within. And how you cultivate your mindset is by making conscious choices every time. Is it easy? No, it's really not easy. But is it worth it? Definitely. Why? Because it makes you grow. It makes you evolve as a person. So I think it's important to practice these things consciously in order to bring about, like, if you want a better life, then it's good to practice it so that you grow.
How to be humble if you're smart or have a lot of knowledge about something, because it's sometimes hard to do that when you want to show off.
This question I get a lot. So, when people speak to me, they say you're so humble. So I really don't understand what this humble means, and it so happened that I won an award for the most popular fiction. And I'm very happy when I win awards. I tell people, oh, I won this award. So people somehow equate humility with not speaking about your achievements. Now, see, there is a difference between boasting and there's a difference between sharing. So I think it's a fine line which you have to learn. And I don't understand what you mean by being humble. I really don't get that word. And I've been told I'm humble, so I don't get it. I'm like, what is this being humble? Because it has different ideas in different people's heads. It all depends on the conditioning. So no matter what you do, there are going to be people who say that you're humble. There are going to be people who say, oh, she's not humble at all. She's very arrogant. So it all depends on how people perceive it.
Okay. Somebody has said, when you cycle, you record only those things that look good. And that's not facing things as they are, just looking at the good side and telling people only about that.
I mean, would you rather see a hurt animal lying on the side whimpering, or would you? I mean, I'll of course act, but I don't believe in wearing my grief or my pain for the entire world to see, because that's something which is private to me. And when I'm sharing something, it is what I see. So that doesn't mean I ignore reality. And that doesn't mean I have to show you my pain, or I don't owe anybody anything. Neither does anyone. Like, when you're posting on social media, if you want to focus, because when you go on Twitter, you'll find these people who are always cribbing, all the time. They're complaining about this, they're complaining about that. So you want to see reality, just go on Twitter. You'll see a lot of reality. If you want to see happy things come to my page, you'll feel good. You will feel soothed, and you will believe that there is hope in the world. Because I think it's important also to focus on the good things.
I think this is the last question. Is the law of attraction only a mindset or something like a miracle?
I definitely feel it's a miracle that can be achieved with a mindset. Because I am living my dream life today, and I have manifested it. It has come completely by visualizing it, by taking little steps. So manifestation is real, it works. But the catch is that you have to believe in it. You have to believe that you can take steps to get there, and you have to take those little steps. And you have to be aware that if something doesn't happen, it means that there was something else for you. If it doesn't open, it's not your door. I completely believe in it. And if you believe this, it'll definitely work for you.
Okay.
Tiny.
Preeti, yeah.
Yeah. What about the cover? It's such a beautiful cover.
Yes. Yes.
Tell me about this, this whole thing of holding the umbrella upside down with stuff coming, the stars and all the shine from it.
Yeah.
How did you think of that, or the artist think of it, and how did you agree on that? It's really lovely.
Yeah, this cover was done by Saurabh Das. So full credit to Saurabh because he designs all my book covers. So he completely gets my vibe. So initially, he had given about 5-6 covers and all of them were beautiful. We could have just closed our eyes and picked one and it would have been the right cover. So umbrella, I loved it because, we all are protected with our little umbrella. We go through life with our little umbrella. But it's when we throw away that umbrella that the magic happens. So I felt he captured it beautifully. He came up with it himself because he gets my vibe. Almost all my books, he gets the essence of what the book is about and he designs it. And all of us loved this cover. He had given 5-6 options. My editor fell in love with this cover. I fell in love with it. And everyone else in the publishing house fell in love with it. And that's how this cover was picked.
We have also
because
fallen in love
Mary-
with this.
Yeah, Mary Poppins kind of feel also, no, where you think that you can just fly away. However,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's really lovely looking because if it says magic, it somehow translates into this. I mean, somehow gives you
Yeah.
that feeling.
Yeah.
Very-
Yeah. True.
Very nice.
All right. So thank you, Preeti. I love the book and I love chatting with you as usual, whether on Zoom or in real life. Hopefully, we'll visit Maja House together soon and do this all over again, maybe with the next book. And thank you, Preeti Gill.
And maybe Shiny, Preeti Shinoy. I mean, you said in the beginning that all of this also came out. I mean, you got various reactions to the blog that you were writing, and then people were also waiting for you to give them this message. But then once the book comes out, and now that it has been out, what kind of reactions have you been getting? Have you anything?
I'm like, if you see the reviews have been extremely positive. People have loved the book, and more than anything, they're liking it. That it's not like I'm sitting on a platform and talking down. It's nothing that I have shared. Like I went through the problem of I was not able to say no, so I have shared that, like how I was harassed and how I could not say no, but how I learned. And so people are loving that I have shared things from my life and things they can relate to. And they're really liking that I've shared practical tips of what can I do. It's all great. The philosophy, all great. But what can I do? So in every circumstance, I've given steps that you can take, little steps that you can take. So people are liking it. And I'm very grateful that people are liking it. And more than anything, I'm glad that the book is helping people, because that's what I intended to do when I set out to write this difficult book. And I'm so happy with how it's been received.
Well, I take this opportunity to thank both Shiny and Preeti Shinoy for this wonderful and fantabulous session, where your book, I think, probably is a teacher in itself.
Yeah.
And as you rightly said, you have questions, the answers are there.
Yeah.
You just need to find, you just need to see.
Yeah.
It's so simple to be so happy, and most of us never knew about it. Pandemic, the blessing in disguise, I think, probably for you even, and for the rest of the world with your book, that you could find solace in a cubicle room.
Yeah.
By not going out. And while I was just, listening to you, I wrote a small poem, and it goes like that: a little world of my own, the connection with thyself, the solace, the mystical space where no inhibitions, where I'm just there for me, with me, love, agony, bliss, the world which I belong to, the space I always dreamt of, the divine, the shine, and that's you. And Preeti, it was a beautiful and inspiring story of Graham. Moving a little finger can take you to the heights of the life.
Yeah.
And what a beautiful lesson which you have just quietly shared, that किसी से मिलना हो किसी को रूठे को मनाना हो तो देर नहीं करनी चाहिए, बहुत देर कर देता हूं मैं। किसी को मनाना हो, किसी के घर जाना हो, किसी का हाल पूछना हो, कोई हो अपना जो दिल के पास रहता हो, बहुत देर कर देता हूं मैं. Beautiful. And thanks to Preeti Gill for bringing two beautiful, charming personalities on the Maja House. And we really wish you to be here at Amritsar, Maja House. And we welcome you with the open arms. And thank you so very much.